Hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll wait for Karsten to arrive, and then we'll start. And there's Karsten. Okay. So it's the top of the hour, and the critical mass is here. Let's get going. I see the first thing on the agenda is the time tag. So let's go ahead.
Yeah, my main point bringing this on the agenda again is that CDate is likely to issue a working group last call in the next 2 days. And we said we wanted to synchronize our time tag document with that. And that appears to be in a relatively stable state, with a possible exception of one pull request that proposes adding UT1 to the timescales provided. So we could want to working group last call this approximately at the same time, coordinate this with the sedate chairs, or we might have a reason not to do this at this point, and I would like to find out whether there is such a reason.
Anyone? Just go ahead and speak up. Sounds like not.
Great. So just a quick comment on the UT1 pull request. I think that's a desirable thing to add at some point, since timescales are registered additions. It's not necessarily a problem if this is not included at this point in time, and we might even add it during working group last call if we find we still want to add it. The current definition points into a maze of astronomical documents that may be difficult for people who just want to implement this to follow. So I'm not sure we have done all the work on that PR yet, but maybe people want to have their own look at the PR at some point. So I think that's all I have to say about this.
Okay. If there are no other comments here, then we go on to JSON path IREG-EXP. IREG-EXP.
Yes. So this is just a heads up that JSON Path has issued a working group last call on this document. They should have done this 9 years earlier. Then we could have had that as the definition of CBOR tag 35, which turned out to be problematic, and which is essentially the only part of CBOR we removed on the way from proposed standard to internet standard. So the idea is to actually have a document that defines what an interoperable regular expression is for matching applications, like what we use in the CDDL operator .regex, or what the Yang people use in their pattern statement. Yeah, this is maybe just a pointer for people who care about regular expressions to have a look at the work and to think which of the CBOR working group activities may now be unblocked, assuming that this IREGEX work leads to a conclusion, to a standard.
Any comments or questions on that? All right, hearing none. Let's move on to DNS and CBOR.
Yeah, okay. I prepared some slides for that.
Yes. So you are granted. Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, we're talking. I'm talking about the concise binary object representation of DNS messages. My name is Martin. For those who don't know me, yeah. First, I will present our motivation and introduction, then the definition of it, and then give some examples on analysis, and then some to-be-dones. So this is the motivation is that in core and DNSOP and deprive, we currently discuss a method to transport DNS over CoAP. The problem there is that the packet size exceeds 802.15.4 PDU, depending on query names very quickly, as you can see in the graphic below. And so we have fragmentation, which we of course want to avoid because with high packet loss, we only multiply that packet loss. And so we need a compression format for DNS messages. So the objective of our draft is to specify an encoding of the DNS messages in CBOR and reduce the data of DNS queries and answers by omitting DNS fields. So for DNS queries, we basically just define them as a CBOR array, which should contain at minimum the as a text string the domain name in ITNA encoding that is for which the data is requested. And optionally, there is also a record type specification that can be used. If it's not present, then the record type defaults to the quad A record, and if the record class is not present, it defaults to the in record. Oh, sorry, my door is just ringing. Can I have a very short break? It's just looking who's there.
Sure, of course. I now feel that I should have music playing, but I don't. Maybe that's a suggestion we can make to the Meet Echo folks. Is a button that the chairs can push to play music.
Yeah, it needs to be music that won't get a copyright strike in the YouTube rendition of this video, and that's shot in the dark because you never know what YouTube considers to be copyrighted music at any point in time.
Sorry for that.
No problem.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So yeah, with the DNS query, basically the DNS query is a CBOR array which contains a name, but I think that's cited already. And the response basically is a bunch of resource records. So yeah, the resource record is also a CBOR array which at minimum contains a TTL and the resource data, either encoded as a byte string or if it's a domain name, also as a text string. And it optionally can contain the name and the record type, both default to those that are in the question. And basically a response then is an array of arrays. Each array in that array corresponds to a section. And yeah, and basically only at minimum the answer section is required. If the question section is not present, then basically the question from the query is assumed. But that, of course, assumes that the response can map the query to the response, which is the case with both DOC and also, for example, DOH. But we can also amend the original question, as I said, optionally. So yeah, as a simple example, I can give you here a query for an IPv6 address for example.org. And this results in a CBOR object that is 13 bytes large compared to the 52 bytes a normal DNS wire format has. This allows us for a compression of 400%. And same goes for the corresponding response, where we have a compression rate of 283.3%. But when we look at a little more complex example, for example, if we want to query any record from example.org, as we, for example, do with service discovery sometimes, then, of course, the query is still quite well compressed. But, for example, for the corresponding response, even with all the elisions we provided, we only have a compression rate of 97.5%. It's larger than the format, and so the question is, do we just accept it or use the wire format instead? Yes, Carsten?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt your presentation of this slide. So I think what we are seeing here is that for more complex queries, the built-in message compression in section 4.4 of RFC 1035 actually works. It doesn't do a lot, but it does something. So in this example, it would actually compress the three occurrences of example.org by using the built-in suffix compression of RFC 1035.
Exactly.
So if we look at this some more, or actually it's not 3 times, it's 5 times. If you look more closely, you also see in this example, I'm not sure this is very realistic, opportunity for prefix compression in the IP addresses. That is something that RFC 1035 cannot use, but that we could use. I think the interesting question is, can we define application-oriented subset of the CBOR pact specification, which essentially would be a typical setup?
I actually go into this on the next slide a bit.
Oh, okay.
Maybe after I presented this, we can talk about that. There are still a lot of to be dones. First of all, feedback is appreciated. Carsten's already helped a lot with the 0 version of this draft. I think we need a little bit more help because we are not that much of CBOR knowledgeable at the moment. Then there's also the question of if we need special treatment for EDNS 0, because there the resource records, or pseudo resource records, as it's called in this case, look a little bit different, and I didn't look into that yet. And as Carsten already said, should we add name and address compression? For example, this could be something in a similar vein to SHIC. And yeah, because of the problem with the compression as more complex examples, are there any suggestions how to maybe increase the conciseness or compression rate further? Yeah. So yeah, this basically is the end of my little talk. And again, sorry for the short break there.
Yeah. So how do you think that SHIC actually might help here?
Well, if we have some way to exchange the context that, for example, a rule set as we have with SHIC, and this is already a defined way which we already use for other use cases, then we don't have to add extra complexity because we basically have already this way of compressing and decompressing stuff in the firmware.
Yes, the idea behind SHIC is it's called static context data compression. The idea is to actually identify something that is specific to the relationship between the two parties that communicate using SHIC. So you know that a specific form of UDP packet or whatever is going to be used a lot, and if you do that, then SHIC gives you a very good compression.
Yeah.
DNS is usually a little bit more ad hoc. I mean, you usually you don't know at the start of the relationship between a DNS client and a DNS server what will be the content of those queries. So I'm not sure that SHIC really does
Well,
a lot here.
well, if we look, for example, just in how IoT devices sometimes, or most of the time, communicate. Just an example, they want to request the IP address of the cloud server. Then the cloud server has some domain where we definitely could already predict that it might be avs.com or something like that. So I think at least there is also some predictability where we could leverage SHIC. But yeah, maybe SHIC is the wrong way to go here. I didn't think that's that hard through yet, to be honest.
Yeah, so my point is that really the fact that aws.com is a common suffix would need to become part of the relationship between the DNS client and the DNS server. Now, if the DNS server also is provided by aws.com, that might be the case. But if you have other ways of distributing the work, and maybe the DNS server is still local and is not part of aws.com, that doesn't give you that much.
True.
So I was thinking more in terms of using the functionality of CBOR Pact. So the DNS messages can continue to be self-contained. They don't need external context like SHIC compressed message would be, but we can still use the redundancy that we see on the previous slide. And in this case, since we have 5 instances, can you go back one slide?
Yeah.
Since we have 5 instances of example.org, we only really need one of them, and we would need to have 5 places that actually reference that. So we would change the 11 characters or so of example.org into a number of bytes for a reference. I don't know, 2 or 3 bytes, 4 bytes. So that already would be more than the 5 bytes that we seem to be losing here by not using 1035 compression. And we would maybe be able to make use of the fact that we have opportunity for prefix compression on IP addresses, which are also relatively large, particular with IPv6. So that would be an additional improvement. So I think that might be worth investigating.
Yeah, definitely. So sounds interesting when we can somehow references within CBOR itself. Yeah, could probably help with that. Definitely.
The way RC 1035 does this is pretty pretty intelligent. So I think it's we are not going to be able to get the efficiency of 1035 message compression in CBOR, which is kind of counterintuitive, but that's because CBOR is way more general than what they provided in 1035. But I think this could be compensated by having both prefix and suffix compression available, and so we might get some reasonable result in with respect to conciseness, without getting complexity through the roof. I mean, Pact can be used in really complicated ways, and we certainly don't want to do that. We want to profile it in such a way that it solves exactly the addresses exactly the opportunities we have in DNS.
Yeah, then I will definitely look into using CBOR Pact then for the next version of the draft.
Yeah, my recommendation would be to use everything you want from the reference mechanisms in CBOR Pact, but not necessarily use the same table setup mechanism, because a DNS specific table setup mechanism may be more efficient and maybe more appropriate for the restricted profile we are likely to define for CBOR Pact. So a generic CBOR Pact implementation might still work with this, but might have to use the DNS specific table setup mechanism. And DNS only implementation would simply just do the two mechanisms for prefix and suffix compression that we define, assuming that's what we come up with at the end.
Okay. Yeah, then I will do that. Any further questions or proposals?
Okay.
Okay, then yeah. Then thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So what is the next step on this?
So our plans were to have another version of the draft until Monday, and yeah, definitely look in the CBOR Pact thing that Carsten talked about, and yeah, then hopefully present an update at the next IETF meeting. Yes, you, Carsten?
Okay, so we need this on the agenda for the 115 session.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Good.
So the other question was EDNS 0, and I must admit I may have known what EDNS 0 does exactly 10 years ago, but I'm not sure I still fully remember. So this is your typical example of bringing two technologies together, and you need experts of both technologies. And in the CBOR working group, we can bring the CBOR expertise, but we don't necessarily have the other expertise. I see that there is a DNS Directorate review of this document already being scheduled. Did you see that as well?
Wasn't that a doc draft?
Might very well be.
Yeah, I think that was yeah, that was a doc draft. So yeah, but I can advertise it on the DNS list, the DNS op list as well.
Yeah, you could also just point the reviewer, who I think is known by now, to the other document and ask for input on that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this document is very early stage, so getting too much attention for this is probably not the right thing to do, because people remember it in the early stage that it is. So I think it would be good to have a DNS Directorate member look at this, but not necessarily the whole DNS community picking it apart at this point.
Yeah, then I will rather ping them. Okay. Any further questions? Okay. Then thank you again.
Okay, thanks. So now we're on to the CDDL 2.0. Carsten?
Yes, I didn't prepare slides for this, because most of what's in that draft already has been on slides in previous meetings. The main contribution of this version of this new draft is that I have narrowed this a little bit down and focused on what we actually might want to do in the specific CDDL 2.0 project. I mean, we can always do a CDDL 3.0. So if somebody who has a better computer than I have could just present this draft from the link.
Okay, I will do that. Let's see. Let's come over here. And share screen. And let's go for CDDL draft plan. There we go. Huh. Error. Permission denied by system.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
probably don't have permission for your browser to do screen sharing.
I thought I did. So
Okay.
let me see. And I don't, yeah, I don't think I can do that without shutting down
Yeah.
something and starting up again.
And somebody else?
Yeah. Is somebody else in a position to share their screen? Ira? I will give you, oop, I did the wrong one. I gave you permission to do
Yeah,
slides.
I should have prepared
screen.
this. Sorry.
Revoke slides. Yeah, request sharing your screen, and I'll.
Oh, I did this wrong. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, the middle, the icon in the middle that says share screen.
Yes, I see.
Grant screen. There we go.
Yes, I really want to. Okay. So window or eek. Well, all right. This may or may not work. But we'll see in a moment.
Nice.
Well, I see your
Yeah.
screen. There you go. We have
Perfect.
exactly what we need. Thank you.
You may
Okay.
want to go one font size larger.
Oh, great. I do. Thank you. Here.
So if you skip to section 2. There is a small...
I'm very proud. This morning, I actually read this document before this meeting. That's one in a row for me. But
Excellent.
I don't know that I have intelligent comments, but I do now understand the scope.
Great. So this, as you can see from the table of contents on the right, this has essentially 3 main items. One is about syntax issues, some of which are clarifications, and I don't know whether we want to do this in the same document, and some are extensions. And then there is a discussion about the processing model and a discussion about the module superstructure. And I want to quickly comment on these. So on the syntax deficits item, the biggest requirement that I'm getting again and again is how do I write CDL that deals with ranges of tag numbers? So if you look at the syntax, the ABNF for the syntax that we have in at the top of the screen, this only allows for an unsigned integer right now for the tag number. So it requires you to commit to a specific number. You cannot put CDDL for a range of tag numbers. And I'm proposing to extend this by allowing a tag number to be a CDDL type in angle brackets. So the example below that shows how this might be done. So we have a this probably should reference where it's coming from. So in RFC 9277, we have a number of tags allocated for content types, for content formats, excuse me. So it's this 1668 something to 1668 something else. That's the range. And by putting this range, or the rule name for this range, into angle brackets and into the position where normally the unsigned integer would have been, we have a convenient syntax for providing ranges for tag numbers. So this is something that's really very small increment, but it's incompatible with the CDDL 1.0 syntax. So if you do this in your specification, no CDDL 1.0 processor will be able to process it. So it's yeah, we might put this into a single document on its own, so people can maybe put this in as a CDL 1.2 or something. But I think that's an easy way to solve this particular problem, or to address this particular requirement. 2.2 is about tag-oriented literals where we have a proposal for doing this in the diagnostic notation, but it would be useful to be able to do this in CDDL as well. Now, we could simply adopt the syntax, which would work in the context of CDDL. The problem really is this is again only providing literals, and so we are kind of committing the same mistake that we are repairing for something else in 2.1, where we actually want to be able to write CDDL for what goes there. So I don't have a particularly bright idea how to do this at this point in time. So for instance, maybe one wants to put in ABNF for the thing that is in the single quotes. So this will be a little harder to develop, and maybe it would be useful to develop some ideas how to do that. Uh, 2.3 is just a number of errata reports that have to be done. Again, this could be a separate document because we want to fix these errata for 8610 as well. I don't think we want to reissue 8610, but we might have a small corrections and clarifications document that has these fixes in an agreed way. I'm not going to go through the details here because it's very tedious, but I think it's clear that we want to address all the errata. Number 3 really is the biggest item, and one that maybe goes a little bit beyond what we are defining in the language, the processing model. People are going to write programs that actually make use of CDDL in unexpected ways. So we cannot forecast all kinds of processing that people will do with CDDL. But on the other hand, we probably need to have oops. We probably
Sorry,
need to have.
that was me. Sorry. Carry on.
No problem. Thank you. So we probably want to go beyond validation. We already have the feature mechanism in 9165 that slightly goes beyond validation by telling you what features are being used in a data item that is validated against a CDDL data model. The CDL tool provides a very simple experimental form of annotating a data item. So the data item stays the same in the validation process, but there are comments added to it that allow you to see which rules were used in performing the validation. The feature doesn't work very well at the moment, so that would have to be improved a little bit. But basically, that's something that we already can do with CDDL 1.0. What we might want to add with 2.0 is ways to tell the annotator what information is useful and what information can be left out, because if the tool would really tell everything it knows, it would be way more comments than actual meat. So the one of the things that annotations that are put into the model may be useful for is adding little pieces of predicates or little pieces of programs that operate on the data item and can be used for doing things like co-occurrence constraints. Of course, at some point we run into this evaluation language problem. We don't have a common view of what an evaluation language might be, and it probably is necessary to at least you have to be able to derive a Boolean result from the evaluation language, whether the annotations actually work, provide the additional validation for the data item under test. And finally, the one thing we could do with annotations or based on annotations is to actually do transformation. So we describe how a validated data item could be interpreted in a different way. So if you have some structure that really is just syntactic stuff, you might be able to get rid of the noise in that syntax using a transformation step. And this also can be used for doing things like adding in default values or doing some other transformations that convert syntactic sugar into a canonical form. So my proposal here is to actually continue writing these implementations and do interesting things with the implementations, and maybe do an initial syntax for putting annotation information into a CDDL spec that these implementations can actually use. And maybe that simple syntax could go into CDDL 2.0, but the actual specific mechanisms and processes might be separate documents. So we can keep the language simple, but can build complicated things on top of that if we want to. So finally, the most requested major feature is a module superstructure. And we have looked at a way to provide this in such a way that, at least for a limited amount of time, CDDL 2.0 based specification can still meaningfully be processed by a CDDL 1.0 implementation. So we would use something that looks a little bit like pragmas or preprocessor statements or something in other languages to define these modules. And so this is section 4.1 about compatibility. Then of course we have to run namespaces. We the namespaces are the difficult part to get right, but CDL is prepared for this by including characters that we could co-opt for defining the namespaces, like $ and @ and even the dot is something that we could co-opt. And then, of course, if we have modules, we need to be able to reference one module from another module. And we could do this more like the hash include mechanism the C language uses, where the using module actually points to the used module. Or we could do this more like the way C language modules are linked together, where you essentially provide names in one module that can be picked up in the other module, but you don't really tell the system where that first module can be found. So both has advantages and disadvantages. Directly referencing another module can be very inflexible if you want to start using a new version of that module. Somehow using external information can be difficult if you essentially want to throw things together, and you now need to add all this external information that says how things are working together. You essentially start writing linker scripts. So I think we need to understand what we want to do here. The explicit reference can be useful for non-CDDL information. So 431 actually has an example that shows how to import information from IANA registries. This is a little bit difficult because IANA does not currently have a well-defined programmatic interface to their registries. But we could still define something that already can work at this point in time, and then discuss with IANA how we move forward on this. So, for instance, if we want to have a place in a specification where we use a COSI algorithm, we could define a mechanism that imports the value column from the COSI algorithms registry and makes this available as a choice that could be used in this place. And there's some more text that explains how this is a little bit difficult, but can be done. Yeah, so this is IANA references, but of course the more likely thing we want to use is references into other CDDL modules. And one place where we might find things we want to import might be RFCs, and a very simple syntax like RFC 1990.OID to reference that we actually mean the OID rule that is defined in RFC 1990 might be an easy way to get cross-references between different documents. So it would be possible for an RFC to provide something like a CDDL library that other specifications can use to reference this. And this, we could explicitly support this. This is for 4.2, explicitly interacting with namespaces by providing a way for CDDL specification to say, this document actually exports 3 names. So these are the names you are supposed to use from this document. Yeah, it would then of course define what that is. I didn't copy over all of RFC 1990 here, so that's why this is looks a bit trivial, but that's essentially the idea. And then there could be an explicit import syntax on the other side as well. So you don't have to say RFC 1990.org each time you use an AS1 object identifier. So I think I presented that before. Yeah, retroactive exporting is something we could do. This is useful for CDL. This is actually even way more useful once we notice that CDDL and ABNF actually are very similar in this respect. So retroactive exporting from existing RFCs into ABNF specifications that reference that existing ABNF, that might be very, very useful. So 445 defines a basic idea what operations could be provided here: an export operation, an import operation, and an include operation, which is really about finding the files. Export and import work with files that we already hold in our hands, and include would find that file, for instance, from a URI, possibly with some version mechanism. Okay, and then there are some more things that can be discussed here. Let me skip that. And finally, the observation I already made: ABNF is a lot like CDDL. So whatever we define here may be useful in the ABNF context as well. So I think, well, given that CDDL embraces ABNF more than other data definition languages out there, I think it would be a natural thing for us to make sure we can do the same things with ABNF that we can do with CDDL itself. So that would always be a consideration in this context. Okay, so this was an overview. I don't really expect a lot of comments right now, because this is very few words on something rather complicated. But if you maybe can have a look at this and provide some comments, we might be able to develop this document for a while before the whole thing becomes transparent enough that we know what document structure is best used to develop this into an actual specification. So that's all I have. Any comments right now already?
I heard from, I think I'm still on my mic. If I switch, all things will go strange on your screen. I heard from Amanda just last week that they're doing a major overhaul and upgrade to the storage formats and mechanisms in the IANA registries, and initially prototyping it, I think, with service names and port, but moving it to other registries. And I don't know if you're already up to date on that. I figured you probably were, Karsten, but maybe we can insert the meta requirement that it be easy to import into CDBL values from an arbitrary IANA registry, or anyway, a lot of the IANA registry, just the port.
Yeah, so one thing we could do is at 115, use the fact that IANA people are going to be there and discuss this with them. This has turned out to be very, very useful in previous places where we had needed something more from the IANA than they could offer at the time. So maybe we even want to schedule a side meeting with them.
Well, or do we want to invite them to the CBOR session?
Well, this will then not be focused on IANA, but we sure could do that.
And always allowing for the fact that there are 8 sessions at any instant in time, so collisions are constant.
Well, I'll tell you, Karsten, why don't you talk with Amanda and see what they think is best, whether a side meeting or dropping into the CBOR session would be better.
I will do that.
Okay.
But Karsten and Barry, I would suggest both is best. Have a side meeting in which there's really time to stretch out on, concept whiteboarding, and also have them drop in if they can to the relevant session of CDDL 2.0 during the CBOR meeting.
Yeah, given that we don't meet until Thursday, that would be a reasonable thing. Yeah.
Because that way we could be telling the wider CBOR community, so here's some idea, here's the result of some brainstorming this week with ION.
Okay.
I will now stop sharing, so my screen stops driving you and me crazy.
Well, thanks for doing that, Ira. That was very helpful.
You're welcome. I happened to have it open and it happened.
Yeah, well, I've just given my browser the permissions it needs, but I need to restart the browser after the meeting is over, and I will be okay for the future.
Good.
Okay, any further discussion on this? Okay.
Barry or Karsten, are there joint meetings or joint topics with other IETF work groups that CBOR plans to do, like with COSE or RATS or SOUP or whomever, in the course of IETF 115?
We have no plan for that. If there are some we should set up, let's talk about that. Ira, are you suggesting something in particular that you want to see us do?
Not that I want to see you do, but I would suggest Karsten checking in with Hannes and Brendan in particular, and Dave Toller, because one of the three of them may very well have in the RATS TEEP suit and other things spectrum an idea of something they desperately wish they could express in CDDL, and certainly can't in CDDL 1.0 without, and without informal annotation or whatever, without, just doing it. Yeah, thank you for the notes. I was just reading. That sounds, anyway, I would suggest talking with them if Barry or Hannes or Karsten can do so before the meeting. And there are probably others, Ace, many others. Those came to the top of my head because I follow them.
Yeah, so one thing I'm repeatedly hearing is that people would like to see something like best practice for using CDDL with COSE. And it might be worth writing up something there.
Yeah, unfortunately, our meeting is the same time as Sec Dispatch.
Yeah.
Which will
Oh
draw
boy.
the security people away from the CBOR session.
Yeah, the ones that are not already going to Tigris, or what was the other one? Madinas?
Yeah. The usual IETF meeting mess. So.
No. So we may have to do this in the hallway or in a side meeting.
Right.
I can see I will be watching Sec Dispatch and CBOR in two different windows.
Yes. Okay, so does anyone else have anything we need to talk about? All right, what I have is I just want to remind everybody we got 2 agenda items that came out of this meeting. Please reply on the list if there are things you would like to see on the agenda at the 1:15 session, so that I can put together an agenda. I don't know whether Christian will be on 1:15. He's still on family leave. So I don't know if he'll be participating in 1:15 or not. I will check in with him on that. And if there's nothing else, we can wrap this up. All right, I see nothing else. Karsten?
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you and talk to you soon.
Okay, see you all at IETF 1:15, online or in person.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.